Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Molly Dacey, and for this episode, I'd like to welcome Tracy Myhill. Tracy is an engaging, authentic leader with strong personal values of openness and integrity. She is passionate about the health and well-being of the population and the provision of health services, with a strong commitment to connecting personally with people. Through her open and honest approach, Tracy inspires people from any background and social status to feel that they can aspire to become senior leaders. She's a strong advocate for equality, diversity and inclusion. Following her retirement from the NHS in 2020, after 36 years, Tracy founded and became director of Tracy Myhill Associates, a vehicle through which she provides individual and organisational support, always focusing on enabling people and organisations to be the best that they can be. Thank you so much for joining us, Tracy. If it's okay to begin with, I'd like to ask you some quick fire questions just so our listeners can get to know you a little bit better. What was the last book that you read?
Actually, I'm reading a book at the moment. It's called Affluenza. And it's about a disease of people who want to be affluent. It's a really interesting book.
Okay, and would you recommend it?
Yeah, I would, because my values are about not about getting rich, not about making money, and this is about looking at across the whole of the world in different cultures and different countries about how people are chasing the money sometimes, and then when you sit back and realise that's not the most important thing in life. So it's quite an interesting book.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
What is the last thing that you learned?
Oh gosh, I'm learning all the time. What's the last thing I learned? That's a very good question.
It's quite a difficult one to think, oh, this is exactly what I learned. And some people take it as like a practical, I learned this, and then sometimes it's a lot more philosophical.
Yeah, I mean, all through my career, I've focused on listening and learning and seeing the world through other people, and I'll say that, no doubt, in listen to other questions. And it's something I just can't constantly learn, because I think we can make assumptions. Even with, I've got 4 children in their 20s, and I make assumptions of where they're at. So the learning for me all the time is just to keep listening and keep connected.
What is your greatest strength?
I think my greatest strength is communicating and connecting with people. It's always been something that's, I don't know where I got it from, but people always say, it doesn't matter what job I'm in, how senior I am, that people can talk to me, and I think that's critical, particularly in public services.
Absolutely. What motivates you?
What motivates me is enabling people to be the best that they can be. So whatever I can do to support people to bring out the best in themselves, that's what's always motivated me all my career, and still does in the work I do now.
And lastly, what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Well, I've been a chief executive and an HR director for many years. It's probably not a very exciting one, but along the way, there's 2 things I wish I'd maybe done a bit more of. One, I would have liked to have been a trade union representative, because I spent all my life working with trade union representatives and have lots of respect for them, their jobs to represent their people. So in a more junior job, I wish I'd become a rep. That would have been quite exciting and quite interesting, I think, challenging as well. And I along the way, I always thought maybe I should have been a lawyer. When you work in HR, as I did for many, many years, you spend a lot of time working with employment lawyers. Yeah. And I used to think, I wonder if I could get into their shoes. But I never did. And originally, I wanted to be a physics teacher.
Oh, did you?
So I'm not sure what happened there.
That's a real spectrum of things you would have liked to try.
I failed my A-level in physics twice. That probably put an end to that.
A little bit more difficult.
But I did enjoy it. Yeah. Science and maths are things that I like.
Well, thank you for answering those. It's interesting just to get to know you a bit more. I do have a few more, but I'll come back to those at the end. So our theme for this episode is decisive moments. And having worked in a number of board level roles, as well as making the big decision to retire and establish your own company, I think it's fair to say you've made a lot of big decisions throughout your career. Can you share a decisive moment that shaped your leadership style or philosophy?
Yes, there's many decisive moments. I've worked in and with the NHS and public services for 40 years this year, so you can imagine during that time there would have been a lot. But I guess there's a couple that stick out. One was stepping into a chief executive role. That was a massive decision when you are the top of the tree, when you're the most senior executive in an organisation. That step up was huge. So that was definitely a big choice for me. It took me 18 years as a director to have the courage to step forward into a chief executive role. So that was a big decision. And I guess another decision is when I was a director, taking on much broader and bigger responsibilities. And those two things, there's loads of others, but those two things do stay with me. And in terms of, shaping my leadership style or my philosophy, taking on extra responsibilities, quite, challenging responsibilities, what I learned from that was I did that because I had trust from my boss. I felt confident and I felt safe. So feeling confident, feeling safe, feeling somebody's got your back enabled me to take on more and more responsibilities. And that was a big issue for me. With other bosses, I might not have taken on extra responsibilities because I wouldn't have felt so safe. So that's definitely influenced the way I lead other people, trying to create an environment where they feel safe, where they can shoot for the stars, and if they just miss it, then that's fine. But if they only shoot halfway because they're scared or fearful or they don't feel safe, then they won't achieve as much. And the chief executive role is a very interesting one because you're almost a jack of all trades, a master of none in a way. You've got all your experts around you. So the way my leadership style, I guess, and philosophy developed when I was a chief executive was about servant leadership. I know a lot of people talk about it, but I was there to serve the people. They weren't there to serve me. And my first chief executive job was chief executive of the ambulance service, and I'd never worked in ambulance services, even though I'd worked in the NHS for years. It's very, very different. So stepping into that, top job, it taught me that you don't need to know it all. You actually shouldn't know it all. Because if you do, then you're not a very good leader. So it shaped me in terms of engaging others, finding solutions from people, getting them to help me, and us together find the solutions. So again, creating that climate where people can step up and step forward was massive. And I don't think I would have done that if I hadn't been a chief exec. Because as an HR director, for example, that was my expertise, that was my training. As a chief exec, you need to know a little bit about everything, and you need to enable everybody else to help. So that was massive.
Working in public service organisations at such a senior level, like you said, how big of a step it is to go into a chief exec role, it's kind of like the buck stops with you in terms of responsibility and making those big decisions that will affect so many people, staff and citizens as well. So how can you communicate decisive decisions to your organisation in a way that fosters that trust and that understanding?
I mean, my approach to communicating decisions has always been one of openness, humility, visibility. So, particularly if there's challenging decisions and challenging issues that we need to deal with, I would be doing a lot of that in person. I'm a very, very visible leader, so I would be connecting all the time, out and about. You can't do these jobs in an ivory tower. You've got to connect. And by doing that, it's always at least a two-way conversation, probably a three-way with peers as well. As opposed to, the leader who knows it all and communicates all the decisions. So I would invite challenge to make sure the decisions were as good as they could be. And I had a little bit of a mantra. I used to call it LOLA, L-O-L-A, which was listen, observe, learn, and act. So I would listen, observe, watch what was going on, then learn from that before acting and making decisions. And that's the approach I've tried to take all of the time, really, through my career.
I was going to kind of ask on if you ever had a situation where a member of staff didn't agree with you or understand kind of why that decision was being made, but it's quite evident in the way that you would make decisions that wouldn't necessarily happen because it would be so collaborative and open.
That's true, but not everybody agrees with all of the decisions. You can't always take everybody with you, and you've got to know when to call it then. Because you can be a collaborative, engaging leader, and you can engage and never make a decision. Because when you're running an organisation with one organisation and 16,000 employees, not everybody's going to agree. But by engaging people, listening to people, letting them influence where they can, and then explaining if you can't take every single view on board because people have different views as well.
Yeah.
So you can't make 10 decisions, you've got to make one.
Yeah.
Doing it in that way, I just think helps.
Yeah. A lot of big decisions can kind of be based on facts and figures and data, but there is kind of an argument that you'll need to consider like your own intuition or some emotional intelligence as well. So what role did emotional intelligence play in your decision-making process, especially during moments of crisis?
So emotional intelligence plays a central role in the way that I work, in the way I make decisions, the way I recruit people. It's not good enough or it's not enough, I think, to be smart. As you say, facts and figures, and education is very important, but that alone just doesn't cut it. It's often not what you know, it's how you do what you do. Mm-hmm. So it's played a massive role for me. It's all about showing genuine concern for others, showing understanding, and recognising everybody's different. Mm-hmm. People receive information differently, people react differently. Some people are reactors, some people are reflectors.
Yeah.
So you've got to take that into account. You might have people in the room don't say anything, but they've got lots to say. They just need to reflect and think. Mm-hmm. So you give them an opportunity to come back. And I think that's really important. Knowing your team, knowing who they are, knowing what makes them tick, knowing how they learn, mm-hmm. knowing how they like to take information is important. But it's also about knowing yourself, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think. And for me, knowing my own response to stress, my own response to challenge or crisis. For me, I go a bit more inward. Mm-hmm. I don't engage as much. I become quite exacting, which is not my normal style. So for me, understanding that about me, as well as understanding what makes my people tick, is really important. And also trying to make sure that my team understand me as well as they can.
Yeah.
Because they'll spot it. And they'll say, you haven't come out of your office today, what's going on? And also creating that climate where they can say to me, Trace, you're not yourself. What's bothering you? How can we take this forward? So I think it's about me understanding myself, but it's also about me understanding my team. And something, a couple of words I always use is first seek to understand. Mm-hmm. Don't make assumptions. We all make assumptions all the time. Try really hard not to make assumptions. And there's another book by a gentleman called Ken Jarrold. Used to be HR director, used to be a chief exec, used to be a chair in the NHS, and it's called Other People's Shoes. And it's all about getting into other people's shoes. And there's also research recently I've been reading, which is about walking a mile in somebody else's mind. That's what I mean when I talk about emotional intelligence, is getting into their place, getting into their shoes, getting into the way they're thinking, because then you will make better decisions.
Yeah. Building on the idea of kind of a crisis or stressful times, instances such as COVID-19 have added so much additional pressure to already uncertain times. And in times of uncertainty, how did you stay calm and focused when there was a need for critical decisions, but you also need to stay calm and focused for your staff and your organisation?
So in my sort of 36 employed years and 40 years working with the public sector, I when I look back, I think the COVID-19 pandemic was, a moment in my career that I will never, ever forget, and in life, and I'm sure none of us will. So I led Swansea Bay University Health Board through the COVID pandemic in 2020. Lots of uncertainty, lots of concern, and as you suggest, an ability to try to stay calm when staff were dying, patients were dying, decisions needed to be made that had real, immediate consequences. It was challenging. The way that I kept as calm as I could and kept that strong leadership was to try to focus on what was known, so that there's always some certainty, even when there's huge uncertainty.
Yeah.
So focusing on what is known, what the science was saying, what the research was saying, and making sure people knew the certainties within this very ambiguous situation we were in. But also I would use my team, use peers, use the expertise around me. because it wasn't just about, I might have been the chief exec, but it wasn't just about me.
Yeah.
So when things are uncertain and you need to keep a sort of steady hand, it's using the people around you and getting them to help and getting them to support. And there's also something about being adaptable and being flexible.
Yeah.
I mean, we really needed to be adaptable and flexible because things were changing so much. But also, you have to be directive, and because you have to give confidence to the organisation that despite all of this uncertainty, we have a plan, we have an approach, and yes, we'll adapt it and we'll flex it, but we know what we're trying to do. And then, so giving that direction at certain moments to give confidence was really, really important. And I would always, in times of crisis, times of uncertainty, always work within my values.
Yeah.
I think if you've got strong values, which I have, I'm humble, I've got humility, I'm authentic, I'm real.
Yeah.
Sticking to that, not trying to be somebody I'm not.
Yeah.
Would help me sleep at night, even though it was really, really challenging. And I guess the last thing I would say on that is looking after yourself.
Yeah.
Because it was really, really difficult for everyone. All roads sometimes lead to the chief executive. Everybody's anxieties are placed on the chief executive in some ways, from within the organisation, from government, from partners, from patients, relatives, and you've got to look after yourself. People say, don't they, put your own oxygen mask on first before you help other people. And you can't pour from an empty glass.
Yeah.
You've got to keep yourself as strong as possible. So when it's uncertain and when it's really challenging, I try really hard to step back occasionally and try and keep myself as strong as I can. Because if I'm as strong as I can help other people.
Yeah,
and if
absolutely.
I'm not, we'll all fall apart together. That's really not going to help.
Yeah. Just before we end, I wanted to ask, what advice do you have for emerging leaders when it comes to navigating decisive moments in their careers, but also if you have any of the other general advice for emerging leaders? Yeah,
so stay true to yourself is something that's stuck with me through my career, and is something I say to others. Because quite often we try to be something we're not. It's really difficult to try to be someone you're not. It's really hard. It takes lots of energy if you're pretending, so to speak. So I would always say to try to stay true to yourself. But one of the most important things is to seek advice. If you've got difficult decisions to make, if you've got important career decisions to make, get advice, get a good mentor, work with a coach, talk to peers, talk to colleagues. You don't have to do these things on your own. You don't have to make these decisions on your own. I'd also say to have courage. I've taken on some courageous roles along the way, thinking, what have I done? Am I going to be able to do this? And 99% of the time you can, if you've got that courage, trusting your instincts, but also walking away if it's the right thing to do. We put lots of pressure on people. Yeah. And I think people think, I need to apply for that job because that's the next one, and I don't feel ready for it, and I don't want to do it, but everybody expects me to do it. Yeah. It's really important that you stick to where your core is, and if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. Yeah. And it might be a timing issue. It might be that it's not the right role anyway, but trusting in yourself, I think, is really, really important.
Yeah. Thank you so much for all your insights and stories and ideas today. Just before we end, I'd like to ask a few more quick fire questions, if that's okay. Do you or have you ever played a musical instrument?
I played the piano. I only went to grade 1.
Oh, did you?
But now I have a little bit more time. I'm 60 this year. I'm actually going to get another piano.
Are you?
And I'm gonna start again almost, and see if I can pick it back up. I think music is. I mean, I listen to music, but to play an instrument can be so calming and such an achievement. It's such a different thing, isn't it? Such a different skill.
It is a different skill. I think it's really funny because, like you said, calming. Like I play the drums, which like other people might not necessarily think is very calming, but for me it's very calming. So that is very true.
Yeah.
What is your favourite type of food?
Well, I've just come back from a trip to Vietnam and Cambodia. So lots of noodles and lots of rice. And it was absolutely amazing. I do love that sort of food.
Yeah.
You know, I love rice, love noodles, a little bit spicy food, but not too much. And I always enjoy a good curry.
Oh, I know. It makes me so hungry every time I ask the question. What is your favourite noise?
My favourite noise? The sea. I live near the coast and I love the sea. So I try as often as I can. I'm 5 minutes from the beach, so I try to get out and just walk the coastal path.
Yeah.
And the sound of the sea is just wonderful, so calming.
Are you a morning person or a night owl?
I'm definitely not a morning person.
No.
I never have been. I don't know why. I just can't. It take a while to warm up.
Yeah.
That's something about making sure my team knew that as well. I need a cup of tea before they start bombarding me with
It's a good
stuff.
thing to know.
So I'm definitely a night owl. But as I get older, I need to go to bed earlier as well. So,
So you're a bit in the
maybe
middle.
I'm somewhere in the middle now. Yes.
And lastly, if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
I think if I could have one superpower, it would be to go back 40 years almost and have a bit more confidence and be a bit more self-assured and not worry so much about what people think, especially when you're younger and your career is building. It's very easy to worry about what everybody else thinks as opposed to having the confidence to follow your own path and your own conviction. So my superpower would be talk to my teenage self and my 20s and be able to I don't want to be 20 again,
No.
for sure, but it would be nice to have had that insight and wisdom then, and I think that would have made a difference.
Oh, that's a lovely one. Thank you so much for joining us, Tracy. I hope you've enjoyed the experience.
Thank you very much.
Mae'n podlediad sgyrsiau ar arweinyddiaeth ar gael trwy ein gwefan. Mae'r hawlfraint y podlediad yma yn cael ei gadw gan Llywodraeth Cymru. Our Conversations on Leadership podcast is available through our website. Copyright of this podcast is held by the Welsh Government.